Are live. How's it going, everyone? Today we have a special guest from Reciprocal Ventures, and they've had some notable investments in the crypto ecosystem. Most notably, it's been seed rounds in Solana and Graph Protocol, but they've also been participating in a handful of DeFi, NFT, and infrastructure investments. So, luckily for us today, we have David from Reciprocal Ventures joining us, and we'll just get right into the discussion now.
Yeah,
Oh, how's it going, David? A little
yeah, it's
technical
going great.
difficulty there.
Yeah, cool intro too, and yeah, happy to
Awesome.
be talking to you from live from Mountain Dale.
Exactly. Yeah, it was great seeing you here, and it sounds like you're potentially coming back. So excited for that. And I mean, let's just kick this off with a good question. What has your pulse been overall of all of these recent get-togethers and hacker houses? What do you really think it means for the ecosystem? Since we're on that topic.
Yeah, so I think one of the really cool things is we're having all these hacker houses, and so for a bit we had like Breakpoint, and everybody was probably missing that energy that Breakpoint had of bringing the whole Solana community together. And so it's been great having these hacker houses, being able to be with other people that are already passionate about Solana, but also like some of the new blood that are building really cool, interesting projects. So I'm a big fan of the hacker houses, and so that been to the LA one, and yeah, went to Mountain Dow, and probably will be at the Austin one that's upcoming too. So there's a lot
Yeah.
of cool energy you get, and a lot of cool building, and you get to meet people that have similar passions to you about decentralization, the future of Web3, and a lot of good energy. And so always enjoy going to the hacker houses.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just thought I'd bring that up because this is actually my first one as well. So it's great seeing the overall energy and just having people that are interested and as motivated in the same thing head down building. And to kind of shift gears a little bit, do you want to just outline what Reciprocal Ventures is and the role it plays in the ecosystem for anyone who's not too familiar?
Yeah, so Reciprocal, we're a venture capital firm focused on crypto. And yeah, we started off back in 2016, originally focused on the fintech space. Then 2017 rolled about. We realized decentralized finance would eventually eat away from fintech, and made an investment to 0x and then into Radar Relay. It was actually from the Radar team we got connected to the team that would eventually become Solana at ETH Denver in 2018. And yes, we've been seed investors in Solana, big fans of what's happening in the Solana ecosystem, really doubled down on the Solana space, especially in the DeFi protocols like Saber, Solrise, Hedgehog, also Jet Protocol. And yeah, so we're really big in decentralized finance. As we came from fintech, we know how, I guess, traditional finance works, and are really excited about what can be done with DeFi. And then the other bucket is like Web3 infrastructure. So we saw like a big need for indexing early on. We saw a lot of teams spending a lot of their time just building out indexing for their protocol, and saw the need for a product to be able to do that. So we ended up being seed investors in the Graph, never like core Web3 infrastructure play. And we also invest in like gaming and metaverse projects too. So we have a really cool one that has a metaverse and game component on Solana that hasn't been announced yet, but we're really excited about that. And these founders probably have the strongest like gaming backgrounds we've seen so far.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just all those different verticals. I mean, we've really seen these proliferate a lot over the past year and a half or so. So it's great seeing the space move forward. I'm curious if you can touch on how you've seen the space evolve, even just the Solana ecosystem in itself over the past couple years.
Oh yeah, it's changed a lot. So especially in the last year when all the growth happened. So just like last year, we were investing in like base protocols like Saber, which is now like one of the protocols that have been around the longest on Solana. And yeah, so I think it really started with a lot of the DeFi being the main emphasis. So like early last year, people were saying that, I guess with Serum, for example, being one of the main projects on Solana, that Solana would just be a chain for high frequency trading. It would just be used for like DeFi. And we've seen that narrative change in the last year. So like we saw some NFTs start coming out, especially August time period when like Solana Monkey Business came out. You had the Degen Apes, you had Fugbirds too, and that's when like the Solana NFT ecosystem really took off. And once you have like NFTs, like one of the next steps is going full on gaming, since games are going to have NFTs be a very core component of these future worlds. And we started seeing the gaming sector really take off for Solana. So I was at the LA Hacker House, and yeah, one of the usual things we see at like Solana hackathons is that DeFi just dominates like what projects are building, like that vertical. But the LA Hacker House was much different. Like most of the projects that were presenting and building were from building NFT and game specific projects. So we've seen like the narrative really change that Solana is like a general purpose chain. It does have a really great DeFi system, but like cheap fees and high fast transactions really are well suited for like minting NFTs and games too. So yeah, we've seen pretty much Solana develop like a whole rich ecosystem, which is really cool. And even like Solana Pay now too, being one of the new topics everyone's looking at. It only makes sense since Solana's always been compared against like Visa and the NASDAQ, which does like thousands of transactions per second. And Solana is able to do that and eventually scale over time. So it's a really exciting time period in Solana. It's always fast and changing. And yeah, it's definitely much more interesting project, since last year was pretty much building like the basic infrastructure. And I think in this year, we're going to start seeing some really cool gaming projects coming out and some interesting stuff done with like Solana Pay.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's so many different angles we can go here, right? We're seeing main verticals of DeFi, gaming, the metaverse, infrastructure, DAO tooling, all of these different things. And I think it's just unique that we're seeing a lot more people start posturing towards this gaming narrative, and even just seeing it at the LA Hacker House and the amount of projects that are popping up on Solana. Before we get too far into that, I want to take a step back into the DeFi aspects of things and even maybe a touch of Solana Pay. What is the thesis behind all of this? What made you guys so bullish early on coming from fintech? Was it just very apparent to see when you guys were early getting into this? What's sort of the DeFi thesis there?
Yeah, so we saw the congestion issues on Ethereum even during the previous bull run. And that's why we made the investment into Solana during the seed round, that you needed a blockchain that could be able to highly scale to eventually serve millions or even billions of users. And yeah, Solana is like the chain that we thought was best suited for doing that. So there was a lot of DeFi protocols built like on Ethereum, like options, for example, but they never really got used as much or never really worked out. And we thought like Solana, with its speed and the low fees, that it's very well suited for being that settlement layer for DeFi. And yeah, we made that bet on like Saber early on because we eventually saw that Solana would have billions of TVL. And this is when Solana was still like a small, like sleepy chain. And yeah, we saw that thesis would play out, that there would eventually be billions of dollars of TVL on Solana. And that ended up playing out really quickly during last summer. And it was really cool to see that we really believed that Solana would be able to get to this point. And yeah, it played out really quickly.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then moving forward on that, like I just wanted to touch on it because it was something that proliferated so fast, and it seems like you guys had your ear to the ground on that and really just understood what the scaling meant and how these protocols would come over because it made sense for them. And on the aspects of NFTs and gaming, I mean, I was going through your Twitter profile and it just looks like you've been posturing a lot more towards NFTs in general. And even on this idea of like NFT fi, do you want to touch on that a little bit? What the thoughts are there? It seems definitely like it's difficult to execute, but there are a lot of teams trying to build in those regards.
Yeah, so talk about NFT fi, the project that we invested in, or just NFTs
Yeah,
in
so
general?
that one specifically, but then the further kind of use of bringing together NFTs and decentralized finance.
Okay, so I think that definitely is like a theme that's very occurring in Solana and like elsewhere on other chains right now is like this intersection between like NFTs and DeFi that's playing out. And so there are like lending protocols being built out for like NFTs at the moment. People are looking for ways to get like yield on their NFTs. And a lot of the projects that have done the best in the NFT space have like a token associated with them right now on Solana. So like Boryoku Dragons have Boku, and that project like went insane. It has like a 300, 400 soul floor. And one of the cool things that it did was like follow like the CyberKongz model of giving you tokens every single day. And yeah, people got really attached to that project since it wasn't just another PFP NFT. It was actually, it had a token associated with it that had breeding. And so that was like one of the early, like, I guess, kind of entering NFTs with DeFi, since now you have a token and you can do more with the NFT. And so we're big believers that there's going to be definitely more of an intersection between decentralized finance and NFTs. There was like a recent like Twitter Spaces I did with like Rooter from Solend, and also like Dylan and Ian from Saber were there, and we were talking about what would happen with like NFTs being intersected with like DeFi. And so there's like cool projects like Bridge Split, for example, that's doing like fractionalization. And I think there is like a lot of projects that are thinking about how can you actually have these two worlds merge. And it's playing out right now. So a lot of these hacker houses projects are like at the intersection of like DeFi and NFTs at the moment. And yeah, so it's definitely has captured the imagination of a lot of like builders right now. So we're definitely going to see like more DeFi NFT projects in this current hackathon. There's no doubt about it. I've already seen projects go down that route. And yeah, I think like the thing about NFTs is that they have like the strongest communities, especially like the first like communities that use like squads, which is doing all like the DAO tooling for Solana, were the NFT communities like Monkey DAO, and the Fugbirds like followed after. And yeah, the cool thing is like, yeah, the most active communities are these NFT communities. They go to these like meetups and hacker houses. There's usually like 50 to over 100 people from like Monkey DAO, for example, that show up at these hacker houses, or even like Breakpoint. And yeah, this like passionate base of the users are definitely one of the best like groups to actually have like a strong user base from. And yeah, and having them do DeFi related things too. It's like a strong user base already. And
I think it's amazing seeing all the different routes that NFTs are going in the cross section between DAOs. You also have people trying to intersect DeFi with them, and then of course you have the gaming vertical as well. And I know you touched a bit on squads, and this seems like it's been definitely a topic here of discussion at Mountain DAO on the aspect of having DAO tooling. And it also leads us a little bit more into just general infrastructure. But what do we need to see more of tooling on Solana wise? And it sounds like Squads is looking to bridge a lot of this. What is the general sentiment of DAOs and tooling from your guys' end?
Yeah, so we're really bullish on the DAO tooling space, and we looked at a lot of these previous like DAO tooling projects, even the ones on Ethereum. And yeah, we saw that there is a big need for like serving like the DAO treasuries, for example. So there's like now like billions in DAO treasuries, and sometimes it's just like managed on spreadsheets and isn't done to the best to be able to preserve those treasuries. And yeah, there's a like good multi sigs are needed, being able to have a good voting and have it be done all in like one central place. Like right now, when you want to join a DAO or learn about a DAO or get involved, you're moving between all these different platforms. And one of the cool things about Squads was like the vision was that it would be like an all-encompassing platform, that it would take all these different products on Ethereum that was like broken up and have it all be done in one place. And yeah, I think there's still a lot that has to be done on the DAO tooling side, both on Solana and other chains, to better serve like these DAOs and get people involved. Since I guess some people started hearing about like DAOs with the Constitution DAO, and hearing that narrative of this new organization that's decentralized. And there's definitely going to be more users coming, but it's just hard getting involved right now. And we're definitely going to see, I guess, more tooling that allows people to be able to join DAOs and use them, and yes, stay active. And for DAOs to actually be able to manage like treasuries and etc. So there's still a lot that could be done in this space, but it is definitely an area with like a lot of green pastures. And that's like why we made the investment into squads. There's no one else working on this problem right now. And yeah, that's why we ended up doing that investment in the first place.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And it's definitely been a big topic of discussion. So wanted to bring that up. And I was actually taking a look at what Squads was building, and it looks sweet just how they are bringing it all under one intuitive user interface. So that's definitely something that is interesting and just touches on another one of those verticals, right? We touched a bit on NFTs and went all different routes there. We touched on DeFi. We also touched a bit on DAO tooling. Were there any big verticals there that maybe you guys are thinking about or looking into? Feel free to touch on that. If not, my next question there would just be in regards to what all the venture capital just coming into crypto means. So feel free to jump to the next one or add anything on to our previous discussion there.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of like middleware for like Web3 that hasn't been built out yet. And so there's a lot of core stuff that there's still a lot of like Web3 projects that are decentralized, still relying on AWS, for example, or these centralized entities. And it doesn't make sense that we're relying on these Web2 infrastructure still. So I think there's still a lot to be done for like building the whole Web3 stack still. And so there's still a lot of opportunity in that area. And we're looking at those type of projects still. And
That's awesome.
yeah, I guess we could go on to the next question too.
Yeah. So the next one is really just we've seen a massive influx of venture capital coming in and funding projects. What does this really mean for the space? And in my mind, it just promotes a lot of building and funds it for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, so we're happy there's others coming in the space, and with all that capital coming, it really shows and highlights that there really is something here in Web3. And I think for a long time, the crypto was just seen as like the scary thing. It was just used for money laundering and criminals, and it was like something to be scared and afraid of, and that the institutions wouldn't go behind it. And I think that's really changed a lot recently, that we have these large amounts of like VCs and some of these large institutional financial groups now entering into crypto. And yeah, I think it's a good thing. And a lot of the best projects are able to get funded. There's no lack of capital out there. So yeah, these projects are able to get funded, build their dreams, and help us get to that decentralized Web3 future. So yeah, I think it's a positive that there's this much capital, and it really highlights to everyone that really is something here that's special, and this isn't just a fad, and it's not going to die. Like many have claimed that Bitcoin died like many times over Bitcoin's whole like life, basically. But yeah, this isn't going away, and this much capital shows you this is the real deal.
And I think it's just great to watch the innovation be able to move as fast as it can, because people are excited about this, willing to fund it. And then we're also just seeing a ton of talent to pour in. And that starts to segue to my next question, which is really just touching on, you mentioned that Reciprocal was initially much more postured towards fintech. How have the landscape of Web3 changed the idea of retail participation in some of these markets?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of like ways that retail is able to get involved in these, in the crypto market than in the traditional markets. So a lot of these projects have like lower market caps when retail can start first participating. And that's something that you have to wait for like an IPO on the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange. And there's a lot bigger opportunities for retail within the crypto market. And so we've seen like people buy like their Bored Apes for like 0.08 ETH, and now those are worth like $300,000. And so there's a lot of like bigger opportunities for retail that comes from this decentralized market that anyone could participate. And yeah, people are able to kind of own a piece of the exchange by having like putting liquidity in like Saber or Uniswap or any of these like decentralized exchanges, for example. And so these are opportunities that isn't possible in like the Web2 world, and people are able to take advantage of it and do really well, and even like outpace like inflation by just putting their money in like USDC into one of these liquidity pools and just stake it. And yeah, so there's a lot of like opportunity for retail that comes from this new market that we've seen.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I can experience and touch on that firsthand. So I think that's always a fun question to ask. And it's just been an amazing shift. It obviously does become a double-edged sword of some sort. And it's just making sure people understand the risk. But other than that, it does have massive upside and lets retail into things that were initially gated. So I think it's super interesting. And on the aspect of retail onboarding users, I'm curious, and I mean, we probably touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious from your view, what are like the biggest touch points that will bring on this golden number that everyone likes to refer to of a billion users into crypto and Web3?
Yeah, so I think it's really just having really good user interfaces. And yeah, I think mobile is definitely going to get us there, since yeah, people are using their mobile devices the most. And there's a lot of new interesting use cases that could be done with a mobile device. So we're seeing like Solana Pay finally can occur, since we have mobile wallets. We can be at the terminal at a store and go pay. And that's something that has only been around for like recently. And I think so mobile is going to be like a big piece of it. I think gaming and like the metaverse is going to be like a space that's can bring the billions and millions of users that we've envisioned, since it's fun and it has a really large like group of people that it appeals to. So gaming is played by the very young to some of the older demographics. And I think it's for like DeFi, for example, there's only like a few people that actually trade like options or do some of these really complex like strategies that occurs in DeFi. But gaming appeals to the broader audience, and so building a consumer app that appeals to that group is still yet to be done, but it has a high potential for getting to that billion users that we're all envisioning. So yeah, I think crypto is definitely going to go more mainstream with those like two areas, and that's where like the mass adoption happens.
Yeah. And I think that's amazing to touch on, and just great that we've seen these things proliferate over the past year and a half or so. No one was really having this vision of we're going to build a AAA game on the blockchain um, more than a year ago. And now it's like it's a very common theme. So seeing that does make me hopeful, at least, that it's only more users being onboarded from here. Even things like being able to have Solana Pay, and this is most of the blockchain is just running in the back end, or other things like Fantasia Wallet bringing in, or Fantasia bringing in fantasy sports. All of these things I think are really exciting to just see how much more touch points we have, and just in general, the fact that more talent is pouring in and we are seeing better user interfaces as well. So I think that's just always a great point to touch on. And as we move forward in the space, I think it just becomes more primed to cater to the average consumer. And starting to flip this on its head a little bit, I'm curious, we we in the space, we love the idea of decentralization, DeFi, DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. What is your current take on where this all stands, and how can the space do it better? I feel like currently we have this North Star of decentralization, but how do we actually get there? I also think it maybe looks different depending on what each project is building.
Yeah, I think there really has to be like metrics that everyone uses for decentralization. So there's a lot of people that say like, "Oh, Solana is not decentralized," and you ask them why, what metrics are you using, and like they usually don't respond. Like they'll just say, "Oh, like Ethereum's like more decentralized," or like Cardano or something like that. But so I think like really getting to like the metrics is like where we can start understanding what decentralization is. So are we measuring it off of how many validators there are? Are we measuring it off like the Nakamoto coefficient, for example? And yeah, just getting like really good metrics of how do we measure decentralization, I think, is much needed in the ecosystem, since it's like a word that everyone loves talking about. It is one of the most important like tenets to crypto, but getting to that consensus of what actually is decentralization, how do we measure it, I think it really depends, and it's pretty much a wide open thing that people don't really agree on right now, on like what are the metrics for decentralization. And yeah, I think that's much needed. But I think decentralization is like making sure like anyone can participate, and there are no gatekeepers, and there's no one that could basically take all the power and like screw the rest of the users over. And yeah, I think that's like the motto that we're going after right now. But yeah, I think there's better just getting like a definition of metrics of what we use for decentralization is needed, and I guess educated for like the masses.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it's just great that that is the consensus or the North Star of where Web3 and crypto wants to move, and just getting everyone on the same boat of what decentralization means and really moving forward to with all of that. And this starts to wrap up mainly what I had to ask. I really wanted to touch on these main verticals, what we're seeing now, even ask you what other verticals we're seeing. Things like key infrastructure you mentioned is really important, that we'll probably start seeing more of that. But in general, just from an overall outlook, what's something that is maybe mid to short term on Solana that gets you excited about being in the space? And we'll just leave it there, and then I'll build on top of that one.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about, I guess, the gaming space right now. So like we've been talking about like a lot of these games on Solana, like Star Atlas, and we haven't been able to play any of these games yet and see what the gaming experience on Solana is like. And I think that's going to change within like this Q1. There's going to be these games that are built by developers that have like AAA backgrounds that are going to be launching on Solana very soon, and that will be like really interesting. And what I'm really excited about is seeing like these game developers that have built some like the premier games that I grew up playing, and you probably did too, now building Web3 games, and to see how it does, and see like users get really excited about it. And so that's one of the areas that I'm, I guess, most excited about right now is
Yeah.
gaming on Solana launching this year basically.
Yeah, and I think it's great. Even just the simple aspect of not having to go on and deal with sketchy third-party marketplaces, backdoor gray markets on games that everyone knows exists if you're a hardcore gamer, but then actually being able to open it up and have this value transferable is just a massive step. So I think that's something that's really exciting. And we've already seen game economies proliferate. So to open it up and really have this idea of open economy gaming, I think is pretty massive. And yeah, in the midterm, I would probably agree with that. That's one of the places where I'm focused on the most. I mean, looking at just all the different games here building on Solana is amazing. I actually just did a stream with Tiny Colony, someone who's building a game, and have done a handful of other interviews with builders in the space. So I think it's super exciting on that front. And then to open it up even more, what is your longer term outlook? What are you excited to see in the next 3 to 10 years come into the crypto and Web3 space? What would you want it to look like?
Yes, I by that point I would see like Web3 being the norm, that everyone is using these protocols that we've built. And yeah, by that point we would have reached mass adoption. And I think that's always been like the topic we're focused on, is like when mass adoption is happening. But like within 10 years, we're definitely going to see a lot of people using like Web3 infrastructure, and it will be the norm, that it won't be this like fringe thing anymore, that it will definitely have had its moment of being used globally. So yeah, that's what I'm really excited about. And pretty much like no doubt, like in 10 years, like there's going to be retail and even institutions are going to be using Web3 and crypto infrastructure, and there wouldn't be any like scariness to it. It will just become the norm. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm excited for. And yeah, throughout my, I guess, career as a crypto VC, definitely want that to be playing out, and that's the main goal.
100%. And I think we're starting to see these things proliferate. I mean, all the things we've touched on gaming wise, and just seeing how much more efficient and innovative the technology is getting. Also, in the sense of just like looking at what is already happening in the mainstream, seeing things like the Super Bowl and having crypto almost become a new norm in general advertising, and seeing it in a lot more places. I think we're already getting to this point, and it seems like we're accelerating. So over the next 3 to 10 years, I think it's going to be awesome what it turns into, and probably will just become something where users are interacting with Web3. And like you said, it's not scary, it's not difficult. It just is an intuitive, and it makes sense that this is what they're using and why they're using it. So I'm super excited on that. And just to hear it coming, and a lot of people have consensus on this, is really exciting. And David, that really wraps it up for me. I wanted to touch a lot on just what your thoughts are in the space, especially being building here and catching some of these narratives. Other than that, I'm all wrapped up. Did you have anything else you wanted to tack on to this?
Yeah, even more bullish on Solana this year than I was last year, and I was ultra bullish on Solana last year. And yeah, I think some of the best like D apps for Solana are going to be built like even this year right now. And there's a lot more interesting, talented builders coming into the Solana space. So definitely excited for the projects that come out of this hackathon. And if you're interested in getting connected, I'm always happy to connect with teams. So it's just my name is my Telegram and my Twitter, and that's like the best way to reach out to me.
Yeah, that's awesome, David. And I just want to thank you for coming on here. It was great actually meeting you here at Mountain DAO, seeing people build here in person, and overall just hear your outlook on the market. So you heard it here. I mean, I like the idea of being even more bullish on Solana. But other than that, David, just want to thank you for coming up here, and going to wrap this all up.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. Yeah.
Awesome.